Part 13. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jung Word. Chapter 121. Chapter 121, Mom sells it, does the vicious female partner have no human rights? Sunian turned his attention to Lee Baiken. At this moment, her eyes were filled with resentment. If possible, now Sunian really wants to kill this guy directly with his eyes. At this moment, Lee Baiken suddenly turned around. Sunian, who didn't have time to change his eyes in the future, looked into his eyes and said nonchalantly, "What's wrong?" Sunian was so frightened that he quickly closed his eyes, put away his resentful eyes at lightning speed, and quickly put on a gentle look. "Baiken, Lu Jing looked like he wanted to eat me just now, but I believe you. If he really wants to do something to me, then you will definitely protect me, right? Does it really mean that vicious female supporting characters have no human rights? It was obviously me who took the blame for this guy, but I still had to beg him. But since God has reborn me, I must not be like in my previous life. After this licking dog dies, I have the power. I must deal with this Lu Jing and make that guy regret it." Regret casually put the blame on me. Hearing Sunian's dissatisfied voice, Lee Baiken said casually, "Protection is fine, but I never do business at a loss. You have to think about how to thank me." Sunian. Oh my God, does this world still make sense? Are there any laws? I'm obviously taking the blame for this licking dog. Doesn't this licking dog have some tricks in his heart? Not only did he not thank me, he actually asked me to thank him. Lee Baiken just liked to listen to Sunian's crazy thoughts. The crazier the better. But when Sunian thought about it, his eyes suddenly lit up. Then he timidly came to Lee Baiken. "Everything about me now, inside and outside, belongs to the Lee family, so there is nothing precious. Baiken, if you don't dislike it, then, I can treat me as a person. Here you are." As he spoke, he lowered his head and pretended to be shy. "What do you mean? It's you who thanks me, not me who thanks you. You really know how to take advantage of me." Sunian. Sunian still didn't look up. She was afraid that if she saw Lee Baiken, she wouldn't be able to continue acting. Why is this person always so easy to break the limit of shamelessness? "What do you mean? I really know how to take advantage of him, and when I saved him, I didn't see him agree with me. I have to find a way to get this guy into bed and make him meow." Lee Baiken, since you want to thank me, you must be sincere. Only in this way can the people who helped you feel grateful. But since you said that you are from the Lee family inside and out, I want to thank you. Thank you, then it must have nothing to do with the Lee family, it's all your intention. Hearing this, Sunian raised his head and gave Lee Baiken a bright smile. When this bright smile appeared in Lee Baiken's sight, Lee Baiken couldn't help but shake his head. "Since it's my intention, then it definitely won't be. I'll call someone later and ask someone to borrow some money. Isn't it just the Lee family's money? How can it embarrass someone as smart as me?" Lee Baiken took a deep look at Sunian and just smiled without saying a word. Sunian started calling familiar people in the evening, but couldn't borrow a dime. Sunian. She couldn't help but start to doubt herself. She really didn't remember that her character in this world had fallen to such a low level. She was still the young mistress of the Lee family, so she shouldn't be. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jung Word. Chapter 122. Chapter 122 makes me feel like I have taken the heroine's script. After Lee Baiken got an accurate reply from Sunian's doctor that she had nothing to do and could go home, he immediately took Sunian home. And after returning home, Lee Baiken began to increase security personnel. Even the servants of the Lee family were cleaned directly. Although he didn't know what method Lu Jing would use, he still felt that he should be more cautious. After finishing everything, Lee Baiken couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, no matter how much you do, there will always be some gaps. He looked at the computer screen coldly. Next to him, Josu reported, "Mr. Lee, now the Liu family is controlling the false remarks about the young mistress, which are rising rapidly. Our people have intervened, but the strength of the other party cannot be underestimated. We need time to reduce the heat." Lee Baiken's veins popped out on the back of his hands, and his eyes were cold. The reason why? It is about a video of Sunian that was posted online. This video is of him and Sunian helping Wang Ling a few days ago, but their identities were revealed. What's even more outrageous is that he was also coded in this video. Lu Jing found many people familiar with the matter to reveal that Sunian had not established a foothold in the Li family, so he deliberately approached Wang Ling in order to gain the support of Wang Ling's husband. It was not a big deal at first, but in the video, Sunian while helping, a car accident happened. Sunian was led by the Liu family to make a show, so he ignored other people. Why didn't he take others into consideration? Didn't he arrange for the best doctor to treat the driver who had the accident? Get these out of my hands as soon as possible. Lee Baiken finished these words coldly. After he finished speaking, he stood up and walked towards Sunian's room. During the past, Lee Baiken couldn't help but feel a little panicked. How would Sunian feel if he saw this? Would he be sad? He pushed open the door of Sunian's room. Unexpectedly, I saw him crossing his legs, humming a tune, eating potato chips, and playing with his mobile phone. There was no sign of being unhappy at all. But just when Lee Baiken was about to let go of his worries, he heard Sunian's voice. Why is there such a vicious woman like Sunian in this world? Doesn't she have a mother? Didn't you see anyone in trouble? I just went to check the president of Lee's group, and I found that the president of Lee's group is a completely magical figure. Why on earth would he marry such a woman? Are you blind? I think most of the marriages of such rich people are not voluntary. You really didn't read the news upstairs. She did this because she wanted to stabilize her position. It was obvious that Lee Baiken didn't like her at all. Maybe she was just being shameless. These words made Lee Baiken's heart suddenly clench. Because these words were posted by people on the internet. He quickly walked up to Sunian and took the mobile phone from her hand. Sunian was a little confused when his phone was suddenly taken away like this. She raised her head and looked at him blankly. Sorry. These 3 words from Lee Baiken really frightened Sunian. Am I not awake yet? Why did I see this guy saying sorry to me, but why did this Lee Baiken say sorry to me? Is it because of what happened online today? No, in such plots, don't the female supporting characters always deserve to be so vicious in novels? Why did Lee Baiken, the second male lead, come to say sorry to me? What was going on in this plot? It seems like I took the heroine's script. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 123. Chapter 123. It's not too late yet. You don't need to read the comments on the internet, I will deal with them. Lee Baiken's throat felt a little stiff at the moment. The reason for this is that a guess suddenly came into Lee Baiken's mind. Sunian looks like this. Could it be that she has experienced something like this before? After all, she has lived a lifetime. Sure enough, I heard Sunian sighing in his heart. But I have to say, this plot is still a bit good to me this time. At least I got an apology from Lee Baiken this time, which is much better than in the previous life. By the way, I can use this opportunity to show off. Sunian then hugged Lee Baiken. Lee Baiken was suddenly startled because of Sunian's voice. Baiken, I don't care what people outside say about me. Sunian took advantage of the situation and planned to say something in a pitiful tone. But before Sunian finished speaking, he was rudely interrupted, but I will take it to heart. I will definitely solve this matter. I will let those people play with fire and burn themselves. This is said to Sunian, and also to Lee Baiken himself. Since he has promised to protect Sunian, he will definitely protect her. This made Sunian feel a little unnatural. After all, according to normal circumstances, wouldn't what Lee Baiken have to do now is to push her away? But, now Sunian can clearly feel that Lee Baiken wants to appease him. But Sunian was not happy at all, but rather a little uneasy. Because it can be said that Lee Baiken in his previous life had never given her a good look, and would never have comforted her like this. It may not be a good thing for Lee Baiken to be like this now. Although Lee Baiken knew that Sunian's real attitude was very good, he couldn't help but bring Sunian to the study. Of course, he also wanted Sunian to realize it clearly. Lee Baiken has really changed again. He hoped that Sunian could watch her. He said he would protect her to the end. Sunian came to the study, and Lee Baiken had been issuing various orders. Lee Baiken and the others are so busy. Are they really busy? Still acting? When Lee Baiken heard these words, his expression turned a bit bad. Although he knew that it was because of the so-called plot that he had a somewhat stereotyped impression in Sunian's mind, he had been busy for so long just for this woman. But now that this woman is acting like this, she is really a bit ungrateful. But at this moment, Sunian's heartbeat sounded again. Now I feel more and more that this Lee Baiken is acting. If this Lee Baiken is not acting, then he is stupid. Seeing Lee Baiken like this, I should not have thought that he would take me to show his affection. Then all the rumors can be ignored. Destroy yourself. Lee Baiken. Similarly, for a male protagonist like Lee Baiken who is a good licker, no big thing can affect his sincerity towards the female protagonist. Can Lee Baiken say that he really hasn't thought of this? But when Lu Jing was here, Lee Baiken's acting skills were really amazing. With Lee Baiken's look, I really believed that Lee Baiken really didn't want to lick the heroine. Now that I think about it, when I had that idea, it's very stupid, so stupid that I don't want to do it. Lee Baiken is really embarrassed now. He really didn't think about that much. He only thought about how to fight with Lu Jing and Huo Linyuan. But fortunately, Sunian didn't know his true situation. It's not too late yet. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 124. Chapter 124 Showing Affection? Just at this time, Josu came in again to ask about things. Lee Baiken immediately said, "How are the things I asked you to prepare?" Josu, who just came in, was a little confused when he heard this. But Josu had some ability to be Lee Baiken's secretary for so long. He quickly realized that Lee Baiken had something to explain, and immediately put on a serious expression. "Mr. Lee, this is what you ordered." "I've done everything." "Very good, you work very efficiently." You quickly edited the video of Sunian and I going shopping that day. "If this matter is solved, I will give you a salary increase at the end of the year." Josu immediately understood what Lee Baiken meant. As for Sunian next to him, it turned out that Josula was just reporting some work casually as before. I just listened casually, and even started to think about whether I should find some excuse to go back to the room. After all, staying here and watching them coming in and out like this is really boring. I might as well stay in the room. Play. But I didn't expect Lee Baiken to say that. This, Lee Baiken didn't say anything wrong, or did I have a brain problem when I wanted to make a calligraphy treasure, so I heard it wrong? Lee Baiken means by saying this, does he want to show his affection to me? Is this what the second male licker should say? Is he really going to do this? Under Sunian's puzzled gaze, Lee Baiken slowly walked up to her, Sunian, I think the current situation can only be achieved if we appear in the public eye, and with the video of us going shopping before, then everything can be solved easily. I believe you will cooperate with us. Sunian nodded. While Lee Baiken and Sunian were talking, Josu took out his mobile phone from his pocket and pressed the answer button. When he heard the content on the phone, Josu's expression suddenly changed. Then he looked at Lee Baiken with a troubled look, and casually clicked on his phone a few times, and handed the phone to Lee Baiken respectfully. "Mr. Lee, things have changed slightly now." Lee Baiken heard this. After saying that, he turned to look at Josu. Just when Lee Baiken turned his head, Sunian's gloating voice came to his mind. "I have done some calculations and I am sure that this incident has something to do with the heroine." Lee Baiken took the mobile phone from Josu's hand. Lee Baiken's face darkened when he saw the content on his phone. "Mr. Lee, since Miss Lan has made a conclusion on this matter, how about I evacuate all our people now? After all, if Miss Lan is unhappy, what harm will happen to Miss Ian's body?" That's right. In Josu's eyes, he felt that what Lee Baiken was doing now was just to get angry with Lan Min. He and Lan Min will reconcile sooner or later. He said this also to give Lee Baiken a way to step down. This is also one of the things he has to do as a secretary. If it were the previous Lee Baiken, he might have stepped on Josu's steps and come down directly, but the current Lee Baiken is no longer the previous Lee Baiken. So when Josu finished speaking, he immediately raised his head. "Do everything as I said before." At this moment, Lee Baiken's eyes made Josu couldn't help but shudder, and he immediately nodded to express his understanding. "Hurry and leave immediately." Lee Baiken immediately turned around and looked at Sunian after Josu left. I saw Sunian looking at the phone seriously. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 125. Chapter 125. He was still standing in front of her, and she actually went to beg the old man. Sunian held her cell phone to read Weibo. Lan Ji posted a Weibo attack on her. The content is as follows. I saw this news and I was really angry. Baiken and I have been good friends for many years. It can even be said that I am the person Baiken trusts the most. I have always thought that Sunian was infatuated with Baiken. At some point, as a woman, I really felt sorry for you. But when I saw this, I was really angry. That lady looks like a pregnant woman. What if something happens? Taking advantage of others' threats to gain one's own status. Sunian, I don't know what you think, but I will never approve of you in my life. Sunian clicked on the message below. Wow, the goddess has spoken. This is the first time I know that the goddess and the CEO of Lee Group are actually friends. A public figure like the goddess must pay attention to her speech in normal times, but she speaks out like this now. She really deserves to be my idol. As a friend, the goddess is really loyal. I really envy Lee Baiken for having such a friend who thinks about him. Because of Lan Min's involvement, the people below were scolding Sunian crazily. It cannot be said to be a curse. In the world of this novel, Lan Min is the heroine, and those who follow the heroine are people who stand on the side of justice. People who stand on the side of justice are naturally eager to defend the so-called justice. But of course Sunian, as a vicious female supporting character, cannot endure all this. She is a vicious female supporting character, but she doesn't have the heroine's behavior of swallowing it when she feels wronged. I immediately found the old man's phone number and dialed it. When the call was connected, Sunian immediately said to the old man on the other end of the phone, "Dad, I was bullied by Lan Min. That woman actually bullied you again." Nian, don't worry. Dad will definitely teach that Lanzi a lesson. I will immediately cancel all cooperation with the Huo family. I want everyone to know that he bullied me, Li Jianhong. The price of a daughter-in-law. Lee Baiken, who was originally planning to comfort and promise that he would handle the matter well, said. Sunian's behavior was about to happen, and he had no chance to stop it. The whole process went smoothly. This can be said to be a slap in his face. She actually went to beg the old man to know that he was still standing in front of her. Although he is only Sunian's husband in name, he is still her husband. He immediately walked to Sunian and took the phone from Sunian's hand. "Dad, don't worry, I will give you and Sunian a perfect explanation for this matter." Li Jianhong, who was comforting Sunian on the phone, suddenly froze when he heard Li Baikan's voice. But when Li Jianhong came to his senses, he immediately said in his powerful voice, "Explain it to me, tell me how you want to explain it. I know you don't like Sunian and value that woman Lan Min, but you and Sunian are husband and wife. As a man, you can't bear the responsibility of being a husband at all. What kind of man are you?" "Dad, I understand, I will be a good husband." When Li Baikan said this, he looked at Sunian, who was about to cry, and then said to Sunian word by word, "This matter is indeed true. It's my fault that I didn't handle it well. I will take responsibility and handle this matter well." At this moment, the determination in Li Baikan's eyes made Sunian a little confused. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 126. Chapter 126. Kissing in front of reporters. Lan Yan looked at the situation online. "I feel very satisfied. At the same time, I feel that Sunian's behavior is really stupid. At first, Li Baikan didn't even like her, but he still wanted to interfere in the company's affairs. This makes Lan Min feel more and more that Sunian is not worthy of someone as outstanding as Li Baikan." She suddenly felt a little funny. After all, the last time she saw Li Baikan in that state, she could tell that Li Baikan was already a little attracted to Sunian. But now it's better, and Sunian has finished tormenting him again. Lan Min felt more and more that as a good friend, he shouldn't see Li Baikan with such a woman. This is the time. As Li Baikan's best friend, I should stand up at this time. Lan Min felt that he really needed to call Li Baikan now. But when Lan Min's eyes fell on the screen again, he saw the system prompt: "The blogger you follow Li's group just posted a Weibo, welcome to watch." She clicked in. Then the smile froze on his face. The reason for this is because the Li group officially released a video. The video is edited from multiple surveillance videos. She clicked in and saw Li Baikan shopping with Sunian. Even in the video, Li Baikan looked at Sunian frequently. The whole appearance of a happy young couple. But Lan Min soon realized what he was doing. Li Baikan's father likes his daughter-in-law Sunian very much. Now that Sunian encounters such a situation, Li Baikan's father will definitely not just watch her like this. At this moment, Lan Min suddenly felt that he had a heavy responsibility. "I started posting on Weibo immediately." "Lan Min, Sunian, why do you want to fake it? Do you dare to do it but not admit it? In my eyes, Baikan is my brother. How can I trust my brother to you when you look like this?" Then Lan Min called Li Baikan. But as soon as he got through, Li Baikan died immediately. However, Lan Min is not angry either. If her guess is correct, she should be settling accounts with Sunian now. Li Baikan thought he would send out the video. Then it can be reversed. Can change everything. But I didn't expect that there are still those online. Even thought it was the old man who was speaking out for Sunian. Of course, what makes Li Baikan even more unhappy is Sunian's current attitude. Sunian's indifferent attitude didn't disappoint him at all, and he even said it in his heart. "Hey, the heroine is the heroine, she is so awesome, the world revolves around her, so what's the use of this?" Just like Li Baikan looks like now, it seems that he wants to make the decision for me, but to put it bluntly, it's just in order to compete with the heroine. Lee Baikin frowned and walked up to Sunian with a solemn expression. Without saying a word, he took Sunian's hand and walked outside. Sunian was really confused by Lee Baikin's sudden behavior. What does Lee Baikin want to do? What does he want to do? Why are you walking so fast? Aren't your legs just a little bit longer than mine? As for what it looks like, it's really abominable. At this moment, there are reporters outside Lee's manor. The reporters couldn't get here originally, so these reporters were obviously the work of Lu Jing or Huo Linyuan. When Lee Baikin showed up with Sunian, all the reporters went crazy. Hand the camera, he filmed the two of them crazily. Lee Baikin immediately came to the crowd. After standing still, he kissed Sunian's lips directly. Under the dense flashlights, under Sunian's shocked gaze. Just kiss like this. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 127. Chapter 127. Why can Sunian see so easily that he violated the plot? Lee Baikin didn't know why. Even if it is to prove Sunian and to fight against the so-called plot, it is not like this. If you want to explain it by impulse. But Lee Baikin knew very clearly that he was extremely sober now. Maybe it's what the old man said. No matter what, he is now Sunian's legal husband. As a husband, I watched my wife being insulted like this. He felt it was a humiliation to him. After a kiss, Lee Baikin looked at the group of reporters with a stern look in his eyes. I don't care who arranged it for you, but I hope you can report what I say next truthfully. If you are even a little bit false, you will not be able to work tomorrow morning. The company will disappear from this world. These words shocked all the reporters. Lee Baikin looked around at everyone around him with sharp eyes. That day, my wife Sunian and I went shopping together, and we met a pregnant woman. My wife Sunian saw that something had fallen off her body, so she stepped forward to remind her. While Lee Baikin was talking, he clearly felt his heart aching, and the power seemed to want to come again. Lee Baikin squeezed his hand tightly. It seems that he wants to gain some strength through this method. Sunian also looked at Lee Baikin. She couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth in her heart. No matter what the reason was for Lee Baikin to do this, I know that I will always remember this day and Lee Baikin's appearance at this moment in my life. Lee Baikin couldn't help but look at Sunian when he heard this. When Sunian was led back to the house by Lee Baikin. She feels a little awkward now. No, it's not awkward, it's a weird emotion. For a moment she really didn't know what to do. If I pretend to be grateful to this guy Lee Baikin now, why do I feel that I am a bit too fake? But what should I do later? How should I thank him? Just when Sunian was thinking about things, Lee Baikin suddenly fell to the side. This moment brought her back to her senses. Baikin, Lee Baikin, what's wrong with you? Lee Baikin covered his heart. He breathed a long sigh of relief. Sunian was slightly startled when she saw his action, and then said, Baikin, does your heart hurt? Is it the kind of inexplicable pain, as if your heart is being grasped by an invisible hand? These words made Lee Baikin look at Sunian, and sure enough he heard Sunian say. I understand, this unlucky guy must have touched the plot and was punished. Hey, everything in this book is arranged, especially the second male lead like Lee Baikin, who is regarded as the white moonlight in the heroine's heart. Even though he died after a while, he is still remembered by the heroine for the rest of her life. Even in the later stages, when the heroine is abused by the hero, she will always think of Bai Yueguang. How could such an important character not be unlucky if he touches the plot or even violates the plot's character design? I see. After getting the answer, Lee Baikin understood that he was right to do so. His plan is to touch the plot slowly and bit by bit. Lee Baikin clearly knows that it is difficult to do so. It will definitely be hindered by the so-called plot. But he is not afraid. Suddenly, Lee Baiken suddenly realized something. He looked at Sunian in front of him. Why could Sunian see so easily that he violated the plot? The only explanation. Even Sunian has experienced it. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 128. Chapter 128. I am indeed a clever little clever guy. Lee Baiken recalled the sudden pain he felt just now. Even as a man, he suddenly felt it. I also feel a little unbearable. When he thought of this, Lee Baiken looked at Sunian. Sunian looked so thin, so uncomfortable. Sunian felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by Lee Baiken. Even felt a little scared. No, why is this guy staring at me like that? Don't he tell me, this guy thinks I set him up again. Sunian thought about this and looked at it stiffly. Baiken felt that it was indeed the case. Lee Baiken. He covered his heart and stood up. I did what I promised you. Sue's thoughts were like pounding garlic. I know, I don't doubt Baiken at all, and I also know that you are a person who means what you say. Then if anything happens in the future, don't call me. I will handle it. Sunian. Sunian laughed directly in his heart. If I didn't have a brain, then I would definitely believe it, but I do. Although I don't know why this guy behaves like this, I guess that he only behaved like this once. But on the surface, Sunian looked well behaved. Well, I understand. I will never do it again. In fact, I don't want to rely on Dad. I was really worried to death at that time. I was worried that because of me, what kind of trouble does it cause you? Don't say so many useless things. Think carefully about what kind of thank you can give me after this time is over. Sunian, who has not borrowed money yet, she felt as if her whole body was frozen. You're not ready yet, are you? How could it be? You said last time that I would be prepared. I prepared very carefully. Sunian opened his eyes and denied it with lies. Okay, I think my brain was broken just now, and I actually thought that Lee Baiken looked handsome just now. What a handsome fart. No, I should say, even if I fart, I am still more handsome than this guy. Lee Baiken also eased Sunian's depression. By the way, why didn't I deliberately lead him to get involved in the plot? Even if the plot in this life is a little different from the plot in the previous life, it is probably about the same. Lee Baiken's eyes narrowed slightly. Speaking of which, I'm really looking forward to your gift. After all, judging from your appearance, you should give me a unique gift. Sunian. Unique. It doesn't cost the Lee family, and the thing is still unique for your sake. I have to protect you, and don't worry, I will handle all the information on the internet, and I will make your reputation better. What else can Sunian do now? Naturally, she can only smile bitterly. I think it's good to be infamous now. I don't need the Lee family's money, and then the things are still unique. It's so difficult for me, haha. If I'm not allowed to use the Lee family's money, then I'll use the Suk family's money. It seems like there is a lack of money. Baiken, don't worry, I will definitely give you a perfect gift. Now that. But his good mood did not go a few steps. By the way, let's just give kink underwear as a gift. This method is good. If it works, I will get the seeds. If it doesn't work, then I can him off half to death. No matter what happens to Lee Baiken, I will not lose anything. I am indeed a smart little clever guy. Lee Baiken. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 129. Chapter 129. Am I your biological child, or is Sunian your biological child? The news that Lee Baikan was holding Sunian's hand was quickly released. There was an uproar online. After all, the real owner appeared in person. There are still some voices saying that Lee Baikan is doing this for the benefit of the company and to take into account the reputation of the Lee family. Lee Baikan looked at the messy news with an unusually solemn expression. Through this incident, Lee Baikan was able to see how difficult it would be for him to break this rule. But at this moment, he remembered what Sunian said, that they were such children in their previous life. It seems that there is a way to break the so-called rules and the so-called plot. Just when Lee Baikan was thinking about things, the cell phone's ringtone rang suddenly. Lee Baikan frowned slightly, then took the phone and saw the old man's phone number displayed on the screen. He pressed the answer button. Baikan, you finally woke up, you finally saw the benefits of Nian, you know? I even planned to divorce you and Nian, and then find a good home for Nian, ha ha ha, you have figured it out now, just think about it. Hearing what the old man said, Lee Baikan couldn't help but ask, divorce? Yes, I didn't realize that coercion is sweet until you get married, so I've been thinking recently about whether to divorce you too. After all, although Nian is young, a woman's age cannot afford to delay. When the old man said this, he sighed deeply. After you and Nian divorced, she took half of your property, and then I gave her some. When the time comes, I will find another one who will probably be better than you. Point. While Lee Baikan was listening to the old man's words, the thought of Sunian wanting to use his money to find another man came to his mind. I couldn't help but feel a little upset for a while. He reached out and pulled the tie around his neck. What if I don't agree? The old man opposite obviously didn't expect that Lee Baikan would actually say this, but he immediately said in a contemptuous tone, why don't you agree? What, you want to occupy the latrine and not shit? How immoral. After finishing speaking, at this point, the old man seemed to realize that he had made a mistake, and he quickly sighed, that's what I meant anyway. You now admit that it was wrong for me to marry Sunian, Lee Baikan choked back. But I didn't expect the old man to say, no, it's one thing that Nian wanted to marry you at the beginning, but I think Nian is too young. If she is saddened by the brat outside, then I may. If I don't care about you, it's better to give you a favor. If you don't succeed, then Nian won't suffer much loss with me. In this case, Nian won't be easily deceived by men outside in the future. Lee Baikan. He is a guinea pig. And the old man continued to make up for it. Isn't there a saying? Who hasn't experienced a few scumbags when they were young? Am I your biological child, or is Sunian your biological child? Even Lee Baikan couldn't help but ask. If I had a choice, then I would rather choose Nian as my biological daughter. And if it weren't for the fact that you are my son, how would you get this good thing? Anyway, this is my attitude. What should I do? Look at you. Lee Baikan hung up the old man's phone directly. He felt that if he listened to the old man, he might really be mad at him. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 130. Chapter 130. This woman's aesthetics are really bad. Lee Baikan took a few sips of ice water before adjusting his mentality. This made Lee Baikan couldn't help but think of what Sunian said in his previous life. According to the old man's attitude, the old man may really let Sunian remarry. Even if Sunian doesn't remarry, then the old man will definitely not stop her from finding another man, and he may even be very happy. When he thought of this, Lee Baikan's mind showed the image of Sunian being held by another man. This made Lee Baikan even more upset. Go outside immediately. He arrived outside Sunian's room in a hurry and was stunned. Because at this time, he realized why he was angry. After all, he didn't like Sunian at all. What Sunian did with any man was none of his business. Lee Baiken even feels like he is a now. But they have come. Lee Baiken knocked on the room door a few times, then pushed it open and went in. His face turned even darker. Because Sunian is concentrating on watching TV series at the moment. But Sunian's inner voice said, "Wow, this male protagonist is so handsome. Just, after this guy Lee Baiken dies, I'll support a few male celebrities. Yeah, that's a good idea." Sunian's eyes are shining even now. Such a look also showed that she really wanted to. With a dark face, Lee Baiken walked in front of Sunian and blocked him. Sunian, who was watching enthusiastically, was blocked like this and immediately became unwilling. "What are you doing? Why are you blocking me from watching the TV series? You don't have any morals." "I have no morals." Sunian came back to his senses when he heard this voice. Immediately I saw Lee Baiken's face. If you look at Lee Baiken's black face on a normal day, it's not a big deal. But what Sunian had just watched was the affectionate and handsome male protagonist in the idol drama, and now this guy Lee Baiken suddenly jumped in front of her. Such a slight comparison. It's really tragic. And Sunian's expression made Lee Baiken even more angry. "No, no, I didn't say it. Baiken, you really heard it wrong." The sudden appearance of such a big donkey face really scared me to death. I even thought that I might have nightmares at night, licking dog, if it really gave me nightmares. Then I would definitely draw a circle and curse him. "Baiken, what's the matter with you?" Sunian used her many years of experience to quickly adjust her posture. "Can't you come here if you have nothing to do?" Of course, I thought something happened online again. Something happened online. Sunian made a sad expression. "Of course you can't come here. What are you doing here, disturbing me from watching TV series? It's really abominable." It was obviously a critical moment, but a climax was delaying me here. Sunian couldn't help but move her body quietly, wanting to take a peek at the TV series. "I have dealt with all the online matters, but I think you should still stay with me during this period. Only in this way can others believe that we have a good relationship as a couple." When Lee Baiken spoke, he bent down to pick up the food and put it on the table. "Turn on the remote control and turn off the TV." While turning off the TV, Lee Baiken glanced at the screen, where the male protagonist Sunian wanted to keep. The face is full of technological sense. This woman's aesthetics are really bad. And Sunian, who saw Lee Baiken turning off the TV. "Thank you for your company in the past week. Tomorrow is Monday again. I hope you can continue to vote for me, because your votes make me feel more energetic about writing books. Tomorrow is the last day of the second round. Please continue to support me." End of this chapter.